from the Zero Hour. I'm your host, Richard RJ Eskow. What did activists accomplish in the year 2020? What might we expect from activism in the year 2021? Here to discuss that with me now is Jocelyn Macurdy Keatts. She's a good friend of the Zero Hour. She is also co-host of Solidarity Live on We Act Radio and Television, which is therefore our sister program with Alex Lawson. And she joins us now. So first of all, Jocelyn, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Richard. It's so good to be here.
Well, so good to have you. And so when you think of 2020 and activism, what highlights come to mind for you?
So it's so funny you say that. I feel like it was just yesterday that you and I were talking about the Bernie Sanders primary. It's been a shockingly eventful year for activism, given that none of us were allowed to leave our house. But when you think about the George Floyd actions, you think about all the organizing and mutual aid that was done around COVID actions, the Supreme Court actions, it's kind of incredible and deeply inspiring the number of people who actually did find ways to organize in ways that were safe. And I'm really excited about what 2021 brings, even, vaccine stuff aside. I think people are going to be up to lots of good trouble.
Yeah, I certainly think you could be right. I hope you're right. Certainly the Black Lives Matter movement jumped, made a quantum leap forward. Unfortunately, it took a tragic death or a series of tragic deaths to make it happen. But to me, that was and is a Black-led but multiracial coalition that to me might be a model for movements to come around other issues as well. Obviously, we're going to have a new administration in 2021, and there's going to be a lot of public pressure to do a lot around giving the millions and millions of jobless people the support they need, giving people the health care they need. So I guess the big activism story, I would have to agree with you, of the past year, of the year about to end, would be, in terms of being in the streets, would be Black Lives Matter. But I also think there were other, you alluded to it, whether it's Indivisible and some of the other groups who organized around the election and also around specific issues in Congress. You mentioned the Supreme Court as well. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of battles we see in 2021. Certainly economic issues are going to be at the forefront, but I suspect we will also see, unless the Democrats are able to take the Senate with the Georgia primaries, I think we'll see a lot of obstructionism of even appointments to the Biden cabinet, and there may be activism around that as well.
Well, and I think we're already starting to see this with climate movements really, as we come to the end of this year. The Trump administration is trying very much to sell off the Arctic on their way out the door. And it looks like the Biden administration is going to do everything they can do to obstruct that. But Biden doesn't necessarily have climate activist approval with good reason. I mean, there are appointments that I think people are concerned about. So it's going to be a really interesting year. I mean, what are you most looking forward to, Richard?
Well, I mean, I think the battle around Social Security is going to get interesting, and we talked about that in another segment on this show. But I think Trump's appointees are trying to really damage Social Security. So whether Biden will remove and replace them, I think there'll be some actions around that. I think that climate is obviously huge. I mean, to me, Jocelyn, I think there are, as this has also been a theme of today's show, I think there's this sort of I don't want to say negative, there's a sort of agenda of opposing things we don't like, and then the agenda of calling for things that are part of a progressive vision. So I think in terms of blocking I think there'll be less of the former, hopefully, and more of the latter, because I think that we will, at least without Trump as president, we won't have to try to block some of the horrific things that he was doing on everything from the courts to immigration. But, although there may be things the Biden administration does I'm sure there will be that we want to oppose as well. But I think in terms of leading the Democrats, leading the administration and congressional Democrats with the vision of, for example, expanding the Supreme Court, with a vision,
Yes.
you know, with a vision of doing things they, may be a little reluctant to do, of the Senate, if the Democrats get the Senate, getting rid of the filibuster, of the House coming up with bolder ideas than the CARES Act to address the damage that's been done by the pandemic. So I think Green New Deal, I think pushing for a Green New Deal, pushing for, a bold jobs program. I think, my hope is that 2021 will be the year the left leads on these issues. 2011, interestingly enough, 10 years earlier, was almost that year when Occupy Wall Street came. For a few weeks there, it looked like the left was going to set the agenda. And in a way, Occupy changed the political debate forever. People started talking about the 99%, really changed the way people think about it. The Bernie campaign in 2016 definitely changed the agenda. I think 2021, my big hope, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think my big hope is that we can do the same in 2021.
Well, I'm excited. That's very exciting. I think you might be right, especially because and you felt this around the Black Lives Matter protest this summer, there is just this, people are justifiably so angry and they're fed up. They're fed up with police brutality. They're fed up with economic oppression. We have a pandemic which has turned billionaires into trillionaires, but the only relief provided for middle class family was sort of bolstered unemployment benefits and this $1,200 check. I mean, people have a lot to be angry about. And as we go into the holiday season, if Congress doesn't act in a serious way to provide relief for those people, for the crazy number of families who are still struggling medically and financially from the fallout of the COVID pandemic, I think it would not shock me at all if you see another moment like we saw this summer, but around broader economic justice issues. The cancel rent movement has been doing a lot this year for similar reasons. I mean, people should not be evicted in the middle of a pandemic. Why is this? I mean, I don't think anything I'm saying is controversial.
No. Well, by the way, just parenthetically, Jocelyn, this is why I don't credit your last comment. Just made me think about it. I don't credit polls that say, most Americans describe themselves as moderate, because moderate, I'm a radical leftist, but that seems moderate to me. That's just a reasonable. I think my ideas are reasonable. I think your ideas are reasonable. So what does it mean? I'm a moderate. I don't want to chop anybody's head off. I'm a reasonable guy. I just, so I guess, well, of course, I hope you're right. And what I always worry about is, and we saw a lot of effort to do this with Black Lives Matter, the corporate America and the powers that be always try to, what's the word I'm trying to appropriate, or
Yeah.
so you saw the president, Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan Chase, the CEO, taking a knee and all that stuff at the same time that the big banks were also keeping the money that they've made redlining majority Black neighborhoods and all that stuff. So people will always try to co-opt any new movement that comes along, but I'm hoping that this time around we can resist that. I'm also hoping that, for 4 years, everybody's made it all about Trump when really the problems are deeper than that. And I'm hoping that without the sort of, admittedly horrible, but just with Trump gone, the people won't make it around one person, because I think we're dealing with systemic problems here, I guess I would say.
Sure. And the systemic problems are what allowed Trump to become president in the first place. This exaltation of individual wealth, this tolerance for political and financial corruption. And the ideal, I think, for all of us is that tolerance is wearing thin as people are pulling money out of their retirement funds to deal with this current recession, as people are housing insecure and food insecure and having their hours cut. We are hoping, I think, in the reasonable left, that that
The
people are
moderate
the
radical left.
moderate.
Yeah.
We're the moderates.
We're the
That is
moderate.
a
We're definitely the centrists. If you look at the poll, most people agree with us.
on
So we're the
everything.
center. Yeah.
On
Okay.
climate, on healthcare. It's so funny you say this. My dad the other day was like, "Yeah, I might disagree with half of your platform," but I'm like, "What do you disagree with? You don't disagree with me on anything. You're pro Black Lives Matter. You're pro healthcare justice. You're pro housing justice, but people have been gaslit by a corporate narrative into siding with people who don't have their interests at heart." And so they think of themselves as something that they don't actually politically align with. And I think that's a cultural battle that we still have to fight. And I think you're right. I think Occupy and the Bernie campaign did a lot on in that regard.
And if you look at poll after poll, most voters want aggressive climate action. Most voters want to see the big banks broken up and the banks regulated. Most voters want to see billionaires and corporations pay more in taxes. Most voters want the government to make sure that everyone gets health care and to guarantee it in some way, which is pretty much single payer. So, on issue after issue, but then somehow the narrative gets fed to us by the media that these ideas are crazy left ideas and people don't support them. Well, people may not describe themselves as leftists or democratic socialists or what have you, but although younger people mostly do, but if you look at the issues, this is a very progressive country, and we've been to use your word, gaslit into thinking it's not the case. We've been gaslit by the leaders of the Democratic Party. We've been gaslit by media pundits, and it just isn't true. And again, we're talking with Jocelyn Macurdy Keatts, who is co-host of Solidarity Live, which is a podcast you should definitely check out. And that's why people like you and me and your show and my show exist, is to push back on that narrative, because most people don't even get a chance to hear it. They think they're the only ones out there with these opinions.
And it's weird because I think about, Richard, you and I discuss this at length on air and off air. I don't think a lot of the people that own the corporate media are obviously what they are. But I think at a more base level, when you're dealing with corporate media narratives, people forget a lot of these people are upper middle class, very well educated people. And so they're not bad, right? But they're not working class people. They're not middle class people who are having their interests at stake in a situation like what we've seen in 2020, where one of the shocking things that's not being talked about enough is not just the disparity between the ultra rich and the ultra poor, but it's also that within the middle class, you have people in professional jobs who, as much as they're stressed out and freaked out as everyone else and losing people in their personal lives, it's not the same as people in communities of essential workers who are dying at much higher rates, who can't take off work, where the hospitals are not communities where the hospitals are not equipped to handle the incoming sick. So this pandemic is not hitting us all equally. And that's part of where these disparities and narratives come from. You see this depending on who you interview, right? You interview people in more professional and yeah, they don't love it. Maybe they lost a family member, but then you go into poorer communities and working class communities. They've lost tons of people. They've all been sick. And it's like, are we just going to pretend that's not the case?
And you also look at the top 10% of earners, the professionals who are a big part of the Democratic Party now, for example, and then the top, 1% that are, even more likely to be Republican. But you look at that, if you look at the statistics on jobs, they're kind of coming back from the recession. It's working class people. They're the ones getting hammered with loss, and the ones who can least afford it, with loss of income, with not being able to pay their rent, not being able to pay their other bills, grocery bills. These are the people showing up at shelters. These are the ones waiting in line for food giveaways and that kind of thing at food kitchens. And these are people who are devastated, and these are people who feel they have nobody speaking for them, which is why I really hope that the Democrats in Congress can be a little bolder about proposing, when a bill is strictly aspirational, like the CARES Act, because the Republicans aren't going to pass it, that they at least propose giving people income until this crisis is over, that they propose not just increases in unemployment benefits, but for people who've been out of work a long time now, that maybe we're out of work before the pandemic hit. Aid for them, aid for the communities that have been hard hit, extending the eviction bans and that kind of thing. It's all, we're going to need bolder action from the Democrats if they want to survive, which means we're going to need to force them to do it because they're not going to want to do it.
And I think there's just so much cognitive dissonance right now around that existed before the pandemic and has come into this. And fortunately, I do think that we have tons to be hopeful about. We do have a vaccine coming up. We do have some incredibly creative and dedicated political organizing happening around vaccine justice, around Medicare for all. But it doesn't change the fact that what's happening in this country right now is violent. It's violent. People are being left to die and who can't even afford the care. People are dying alone from COVID, and communities where their families then are ill-equipped to be able to deal with the fallout of that. And it's bizarre because, as you're saying, the top 10% of earners, like, life is kind of sort of normal. I'm not going to say normal, right? I think we would all like to go to Europe. It would be nice, but it's not
Right.
really.
And I think a lot of parents are doing Zoom calls while trying to watch their kids. And, sure, people are struggling, but they're not struggling the way frontline workers or unemployed people or, other folks are struggling. And so they're not really feeling the sense of urgency that they should be feeling. And the people who are feeling the sense of urgency, I think, just feel alienated, a lot of them, from the whole political system.
And busy, right? I mean, we've all, I think, those of us who've had 3 jobs at once, there isn't a lot of time left over to call your members of Congress.
Right.
Especially when you add in things like taking care of ailing family members or children or any form of social or emotional strife that, a lot of these communities also deal with higher incidents of interpersonal strife and violence because guess what? It's stressful when this is your day-to-day existence. And it really is just, I think that in the fact that our elected representatives were able to provide billions in relief for corporations. Oh, and in this, it's mind blowing. Billionaires have become trillionaires while everything we're talking about is happening. And I really do hope my vision for 2021 is that and of course Black Lives Matter is at the forefront of what we're talking about. And it would be nice to expand the courts, of course. My list is very long, actually, as I keep
My
talking.
list is long too, but I think it should be long. I mean, look, my list includes abolish the Senate. Just get rid of it.
Why do we still have it? I'm with you, Richard. It bothers me.
It's a slaveholder relic, and it's inherently undemocratic. Never has been anything but anti-democratic. It, to the extent that it's not a slaveholder relic, it's a relic of the House of Lords, which is what we supposedly fought a revolution to get rid of, which is aristocracy and royalty. So there's absolutely no reason to have it. So why should a Californian's vote be worth 1/40th of a Rhode Island resident's vote? There's just no sense to it at all. Of course, if we're not ready to do that yet, then statehood for Puerto Rico, Washington, D.C., split California into 6 parts. I've got a whole plan for 60 states, and the extra 10 would all be Democratic majority. If Rhode Island can have 2 senators, if Wyoming can have 2 senators, D.C. should have 2 senators, Puerto Rico should probably have 4. That's my plan.
I love it. I'm all about this plan.
All right.
Where do we start?
So have you interviewed a bunch of activists this year?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, sorry, I'm so overwhelmed. There's so much to talk about. I have to say that when I think about this year, the things that I've been privileged enough to see, so impressed with the Women's March and Center for Popular Democracy, the organizing or what that they did around the nomination of the Barrett nomination. But some of the best moments of my life were being able to cover the Black Lives Matter protests. It was very, very, very impressive and inspiring. The number of people, especially young people, who organized these actions knowing they were going to get shot at and tear gassed. You know, our crew was at Lafayette Square in the infamous day where Trump shot at all of us so he could pose with a Protestant Bible in front of a church he'd never attended. And, you know, it was very bizarre. It was very bizarre. But the crazy thing is people kept coming in bigger and bigger numbers. It was the most inspiring thing I've ever witnessed in my life. Like the fact that people knew they were risking bodily harm and arrest in the middle of a pandemic, let's not minimize that. And they came anyway. And they didn't, you know, these were really, really young people mostly. Like the thing that didn't really feel like it was communicated to me and the broader media narrative was that a lot of these were teenagers. So you have these full riot gear, decked out police officers shooting at teenagers who were not like scary looking teenagers. They were kids. And, you know, I think that we as a country owe the people, the activists, such a debt because the public opinion did shift. And people who say protesting doesn't work well. Black Lives Matter went from having like a 40% approval rating to an 80% approval rating overnight because all of a sudden everybody and their mother was talking about racial justice. So many major cities all over the country were actively defunding the police and creating fairer situations for Black people and people of color. So, yeah, it was incredible. I'm still excited about it. I know we're all cold and inside and COVIDy right now, but it was a really, really beautiful summer.
And I'll only add that as a former scary looking teenager, I don't even think we should shoot at the scary ones. But
I wasn't trying to say that.
No, I know. But no, I think you're absolutely right. No, protesting works. I also think I couldn't go to the BLM protest because I was having health problems and I'm at very high risk for COVID. So I just couldn't do it. But I also think that, you know, for all the talk of Network Nation and the internet and online organizing, all of which, you know, we do here and, you know, we all do in our world, I think there's no replacement for the energy and as well as the exchange of just ideas and good looks and nice looks towards one another, you know, supportive energy, all those things, and ideas, conversations. There's just no replacement for human contact on a mass scale like that. I think it just does something that you don't get online in Zoom or emails or you know, daily coasts or whatever. I mean, in Facebook, you know, just you don't get it there. You only get it being in community with other people in real time, physical space, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And I mean, I 100% agree with you. And they're, you know, that's not crazy. They've done research on this. And I'm a digital organizer, so I'm obviously all about the internets, but the psychology of staring at a screen and the things that make you think and feel is nothing like being in the streets with people and, you know, people handing each other water and masks and being there for one another and running from the cops together, which is very exciting pastime. It's all
I did it many years ago, just to be clear.
Not that many, I'm sure.
No, a lot. Yeah, probably. Well, let's see, 50.
50? Nothing. That can't be true. You're telling me you haven't run from the cops in 50 years.
Oh no, I have since then, but the first time was 50 years
Oh,
ago.
okay. Your inaugural fleeing of the cops. Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm counting both the March on Washington and the time my friends and I stole a flag from a gas station. But that was just vandalism.
Wait, which one was more exciting?
The demonstration was way more exciting.
That's good to know.
Yeah, yeah. The other was just stupid. But no, but it also what I don't get from online that I do get from real world demonstrations is the gut sense, not just the intellectual sense, that a better world really is possible. I don't get that from anything other than being with like minded people who feel the same way I do.
Which is unfortunate because a better world is possible and it's imminent. It's with us right now. We're just in the building stages, but it's on its way. And it's so funny you say that because I think it is important, those of us who live online some or much of the time, to really remember that the internet is a tool. It's an organizing tool. It's a way of conveying information, but it's not where our energy should live. We should be helping one another in lived acts of solidarity, like Solidarity Live, Alex and my show.
Nice creative
But
plug in, yeah. Because
yeah, it
after
was
all,
natural. It happened on its own.
it's a 0 hour for doing something about it. So yeah, of course you would. All right.
But it's true. It's true. And I think it's difficult right now when we're all shut up in our houses, but there are still ways. And I mean, again, we saw that with all the protests this summer, but just even in like there are so many things we can be doing for one another now in terms of mutual aid now that we're all sort of economically and health fragile. I do think that one of the biggest things that we in the left should be doing is just being there for one another in every way we can and we can extend ourselves to, which I know is difficult because everybody's having a hard time right now, but
But I agree with everything you've said. And I think the big challenge for 2021, and it's really been our big challenge all along, Jocelyn, is, the Occupy movement was an incredible success as a series of demonstrations. And it was coordinated state, federal effort to crack down on it and break it up. But it was a tremendous success initially. The Women's March in January 2017, amazing global and not just nationwide, but global success. Black Lives Matter this year, amazing global success, and especially in this country. But what we need to get good at, and we're not good at yet, Bernie campaign, both campaigns, but especially 2016, changing the way people think, is taking that electric energy and keeping it alive and turning it into real power. And it's easier said than done. We're going to have to really think about how to do that and have conversations about how to do that. But I feel as if that's the challenge before us, not just to have more great demonstrations. And true, Occupy changed people's minds. Black Lives Matter changed people's minds even more. Women's March got through to a lot of people both times. But I feel as if now we need to figure out how to take that and make it a real movement for change and not just something that, lights up every once in a while. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I 100% agree. Yeah. And I think it's a couple of things. I mean, there are very real out external material. I mean, we're fighting literally the most powerful people on the planet. They do not want to give us a good climate and a good, just society, but sometimes we win. I mean, Bank of America recently refused to finance any drilling in the Arctic because there was so much public opinion pressure and like, yeah, this is bad. Let's not kill the polar bears and the caribou and drive the local indigenous tribes off their land. And all major American banks have now refused to finance drilling in the Arctic, which is a huge victory for us. So I think it's just, it's that, but it's also the fact that we on the left sometimes don't like to be terribly nice to each other, which I don't understand.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that goes into one of my big themes, which is being a positive vision for the world. I mean, and just on the banks, yeah. I mean, I think big bank executives are the scum of the earth. I mean, don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but I don't think they give a damn about the polar bears or indigenous people or anything else you and I care about. But I do think they can be pressured, and we are the ones who must pressure them. But say more about that before I let you go. Say more about what you were thinking about we on the left not being nice to one another.
Well, I think that it's a very we could talk about this all day. I'm sorry. Okay, so let me try to put it into smaller things. Okay, I believe that when you have a psychology which is very justifiably suspicious, because we are on the left calling out moral evils. And so we're looking for moral holes. And I think there's a natural social tendency to turn that light on one another. And sometimes it's appropriate, but a lot of the times it's not. And this is where you have the perpetual theme in American politics of people on the right are interested in consolidating power together, and we're more interested in maybe it's our niche issue, maybe it's a certain type of moral purity, but it's unfortunate because if we could come together the way the right is so adept at coming together, I don't think anything could stop us. Because as you said earlier in the program, Richard, this is a progressive country. We are people who have the right opinions. Now we just have to translate those opinions into an actual government that works for its people and not against them.
And I agree with everything you said, Jocelyn. And also, if I agree with someone else on 99 out of 100 issues and disagree on the 100th, I would hope that both they and I could assume goodwill on the other person's part and not, well, of course you say that because you're funded by corporate interests, or as someone said to me, you work for a Democratic front group. I do? I didn't even know that. I'm not even a
Really?
Democrat. Yeah. I am now, but I wasn't then. Whatever it is, I mean, if we can assume goodwill the way, Dr. King assumed goodwill, the way Gandhi assumed goodwill, the way, people may do bad things. And they assumed it of people who did morally terrible things, but they just
Yes.
assumed, they can be educated. They're ignorant. And most people. So, yes, I would hope for that spirit of tolerance and love on the left too, but well, that's something else for us to work for in 2021. So I've just gone on a rant about that too. But before I let
No, but it's just because okay, can I say one more thing? Am I allowed to
Sure,
say
of
one more thing
course, yeah, no,
before
no,
I
we
get
got
yelled at
time.
me?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's not like what we're saying isn't about sentiment or like social good feelings. It's productive. When the brain is in a state of high attack or high alert or anxiety, that's not where we as humans are most productive. When we feel, though, that we have each other's backs, that we're okay, that we're doing good things, we're unstoppable. That's where people's sense of like transcendent courage comes from and transcendent productivity. And we can't have that if we're constantly stressing each other out. It's
Well,
just,
yeah, I think that's beautifully said. And I also think that for people who don't know yet that they agree with us, that if all they see is negativity and bitterness and, the world is filled with, corporate sellouts, and which it is, but, but if there's no humor, if there's no joy, if there's no love coming across, then they're going to be like, I don't want to spend my political future with these people. And if you don't want to engage, this is a thing that really bothers me about the left, and I'm in danger of going over time, but you got me going. If,
hey, I'm with you.
you know, this tendency on the left to say, if you don't agree with me, I don't want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how you make political change. You make political change by talking to the people who don't already agree with you. That's how you do it. I worked for Bernie Sanders. He's great at doing that. He's great at talking to Trump voters. All of these great activist leaders, everybody else, union organizers, political leaders, the ones who really changed the world were the ones who said, well, I think you ought to look at that a different way. And to say, oh, well, you support this neoliberal policy, then I won't talk to you. Then you know what? You shouldn't be an activist. You shouldn't be a politician. It's not the career for you because you don't have the tolerance or the openness to human interaction that it takes. So, all right, my rant is over. I'll give you
Wait,
the
no,
last word.
oh man, that was such a good rant. I'm sorry.
No, no, it's the clock is ticking.
No, Richard, I just want to like thank you so much and co-sign on all the above. That's so beautiful and it's so true. If you aren't willing to lean into the complexities and the nuance of the human experience and what it means to connect with people and to be led, to be guided. I know that I have so much to learn from activists of color, from activists on things I'm not familiar with, and just in general because I'm a flawed person until you can be led by others and realize that politics is about connecting for the common good. It's not about narcissistically imposing your opinions on other people. It's about politics is the truest form of love and it's lived sense. And until we can actually love one another, this work is kind of dumb. So I don't want to do dumb things. I want us to be there for each other and create a world that's safe for everyone. So
I love what you just said, and we'll leave it there. Jocelyn Macurdy Keatts is the co-host of Solidarity Live. Check it out with a simple Google search ought to reveal it to you. And Jocelyn, as always, thanks for coming on the program. As always, great to talk to you.
so good to talk to you. Bye, guys.
And goodbye to you. And to the rest of you, we will be right back. So no goodbyes for you. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and you're listening to The Zero Hour.